Hi everyone. I wanted to see if I could post a few book reviews this evening, I should say. It's already well past dark. Um, I have an interesting and sort of controversial book for you that I'll review in the next video, and a novel. And this one that I want to start out with, which is a book of, I guess, religious contemplation or thought by a little red novelist and short story writer who, by the title of the video, you can tell is Reynolds Price. And the name of the book is A Serious Way of Wondering, The Ethics of Jesus Imagined. The Ethics of Jesus Imagined by Reynolds Price. You might recognize Reynolds Price's name from having written the introduction on that very recently new edition of Revolutionary Road. The one that's the movie tie-in version. He actually wrote the introduction for that edition of the book. So, and he's actually not a terrible critic either. You read the essay; it's not a bad discussion of the book. But this is the book I'm going to talk about today. In it, you can probably tell he's from the engagement that he takes and the reason that he wrote the book. He's a lifelong Christian, specifically a lifelong Catholic, and has always been sort of redrawn to the question of Christian ethics from sometimes a very heterodox angle. And that's what this book has going for it. Reynolds Price is maybe not best known, certainly not best known for his writing on religion, but most people are familiar with his fiction, and they'll recognize the importance of Christianity within it. An importance that looms just as large as it does in many other Southern writers' work, like Flannery O'Connor, Carson McCullers, and even William Faulkner. This very short volume, I think it's about 130 pages, is just one more that Reynolds Price has dedicated to a several decades-long quest to understand what he believes to be the historical Jesus and his continuing legacy in the tradition to which Jesus gave his name, that is, Christianity. Price tetchily, but accurately, I think, points out that today it seems like everyone, at least most Christians, fervently know what Christ would have done in any number of ethical dilemmas which were not recounted in the Gospels, many dilemmas which we would maybe call modern. And as he repeatedly reminds the readers here, he finds himself struck between these two camps of people, the sort of theological illiterate that go around with the "what would Jesus do" wristbands, who really know nothing about the history of Christianity or the church or really Abrahamic religion writ large, and on the other hand, the arch literacy of people in things like the Jesus Seminar. And when you think of the Jesus Seminar, you might think of people like Jean Cresson or Marcus Borg, two big names associated with the movement, with whom Price has major methodological quibbles. So Price's lack of presumption here is appreciated. He doesn't assume to know answers like those two really big, loud camps of people would. As a Christian, though an admittedly unorthodox one, like I said, a pretty heterodox one, he begins here with this starting point, that Jesus Christ really lived, he was a real historical person, and really rose from the dead. According to some scholars, because of this, he's already gone too far, of course, having risen from the dead is scientifically problematic, to say the least. But it's an assumption he makes. It's a sort of one of the cores of what he considers being a Christian. So we must all begin with some axiomatic assumption, and if that's where he wants to begin as a professed Christian, it's sort of difficult to begrudge him that point. Unfortunately, what follows from that presumption is sort of the worst in milquetoast ethics from the dregs of bland, uninspiring 20th century Christianity. Things like Jesus never would have condemned homosexuality, and the essence of Christianity is, quote, God loved us, we must love one another. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with either one of those assertions, except for the fact that Price happens to be a homosexual himself, and his own celerity to exonerate himself in the eyes of Jesus sort of smacks of the same Christian presumption that I mentioned in the two groups above. We always want to exonerate ourselves in the eyes of our moral exemplars, don't we? Price doesn't contend to be a religious scholar or have any formal training in anything he's talking about here. And to his credit, quite the opposite is true. He's very much an amateur. He's just a passionate Christian trying to make sense out of his world. And who can hold this against him? If I'm going to subscribe to the theological, it can't be as toothless and as lovey-dovey as this is. Mine has to be more Kierkegaardian, but that's another video of itself. You end up getting, with Reynolds Price, a heaven that resembles something like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where everyone has a golden ticket. You get this sort of idea of universal grace and forgiveness, which really rest at the heart of most kinds of Christianity, yet just as central to most kinds of Christianity is a body of proscribed behaviors and transgressions against which, if you act, you must be punished. So all of this is to really come to the question and to address the question, where does the stress fall? Does it stress on this punitive element, or does it stress on the love and forgiveness and grace? This is a question that can be taken up in hundreds of different denominations and ultimately only in the theology, perhaps, of the human heart. Price's attempt to provide answers will satisfy some readers, most likely those who identify themselves as liberal Christians, but it was less appealing to me. I'm not even a Christian. If I was a Christian, I wouldn't be an Orthodox one. But I would say I'm an open-minded atheist with a long-standing interest in Christian history, ethics, and Christology. And this it was an interesting book. It's wonderful to see how someone so interested in the church and in Christian history has, over several decades, dealt with some of the major questions in the New Testament and the Old Testament, and how they sort of sing in tandem with one another. But there was a lot of things to be left said about this book. This is a book by Reynolds Price. It's called A Serious Way of Wondering: The Ethics of Jesus Imagined.